control. So what should be done about Saudi Arabia? With us tonight to talk about it, we've got Joel Mowbray. He wrote Dangerous Diplomacy, How the State Department Threatens America's Security. And also Hussein Ibish, he's also here, and he's the communications director for the American and Arab Anti-Discrimination Committee. Let me begin with you, Joel. You've written about this before. It seems like events are spiraling out of control in Saudi Arabia. Are the Saudis with us, as George Bush said? Or are they with the terrorists?
Well, the Saudis have always been shaking our hand with one hand and then stabbing us in the back with the other hand. And that's the Saudi game. So right now they're doing these, going through the motions. They're saying, hey, look, we're consolidating charities, we're doing this reform and that reform to cut down direct financing to terrorists. Now, let's say, Joe, that we even take them at their word. That's a big if. But if we do take them at their word, even then, Saudi money is still going to support the vast majority of terrorism in the world, not through direct aid to terrorist organizations, but through the much more expensive proposition of creating the infrastructure that radicalizes and brainwashes young Muslim and Arab children, and then turns them, puts them into this production factory, this assembly line, where they take young Palestinian kids and send them to their death, and other people in Iraq and elsewhere send them to their death, and to kill and mass murder attacks. And that's the problem: is you have these madrasas, the religious schools, and then you have the mosques, and then you have various groups that are there to politically protect all this, and this is what you have as the infrastructure of terrorism. And this is what's expensive, and this is what matters.
Hussein, of course, a lot of people will say, well, you know what, Joel's got a point. 15 of the 19 hijackers on 9/11 were from Saudi Arabia. Yeah. Are the Saudis guilty of basically churning out terrorist after terrorist to attack not only American but also Jewish interests?
Well, if you mean the Saudi government, I think the answer is obviously not. And there's a profound logical inconsistency in what he's saying. If you look at the recent actions of al-Qaeda in Saudi Arabia, aimed both at Saudi and American interests, and clearly the principal aim of which is to destabilize and indeed bring down the Saudi government, you'd have to say that if what Joel is saying is true, if there's really a conscious effort to promote terrorism on the part of the Saudi government, and especially al-Qaeda, that they're trying to destroy themselves, that they're actually, plotting their own downfall. This makes no sense. What the administration says makes much more sense, which is that the Saudi regime was complacent, as we were before 9/11, and that their wake-up call came a year and a half after ours with the first Riyadh attack, and that now we are basically on the same page here. They have no choice but to try to crush al-Qaeda.
Hussein, hold on a second. Joel, I'll give you a chance to answer that question, respond to that. But Hussein, I want to ask you, why does the prince come out and blame 9/11 on Jews, blame most of the attacks on Zionism? What's that about?
There have been a couple of instances where Saudi officials have said things that I don't find defensible like that. I think that what they're doing is basically kind of playing to a domestic constituency. You've got very different statements coming out of the Saudi ambassador recently that were printed in the Washington Post, the New York Times, etc., and that were translated from Arabic Saudi newspapers. It's not like he said them there first. So he's saying we can't blame Jews, we can't blame Israel, and we have to clean up this problem that is a threat against us that exists in our country. And I think he's right about that.
Joel, I want to ask you, I want to follow up, Joel, with a point that Hussein made, and that is, if Saudi Arabia is funding al-Qaeda, then why is al-Qaeda blowing up Saudi Arabian infrastructure and killing people over there?
See, I agree with Hussein when he says it's crazy to think that the Saudis would be contributing to their own demise, yet they are. Because, again, even if they take away the direct funding to terrorist organizations, the problem is it's the infrastructure of terrorism, this machine that churns out brainwashed, indoctrinated, radical Islamic youths who want to go out and commit these attacks and take their own lives and send themselves up to Allah in a mass murderous attack. The problem is, Joe, that is what's expensive. It's the suicide bombs. It's the logistics of actual attacks. It isn't that expensive. You have Iran and other places that fund that. The Saudis fund the infrastructure, and they make it possible. And they can't get rid of that funding, Joe, because the moment they do, they lose the legitimacy.
Hussein, let me show you a poll really quickly, and you can respond to that. But I want to show you a poll that was conducted by a Saudi security expert.
Right.
He asked 15,000 Saudis their opinion of Osama bin Laden's sermons and rhetoric. 49% said they had a favorable opinion. Meanwhile, only 12% had a favorable opinion of liberal reformers in the kingdom. Is this a problem that's much bigger than just Osama bin Laden? Is it a PR problem?
No, it's a serious political problem in Saudi Arabia. Two things about that poll, though. One, it was conducted before the Riyadh attacks of a year and a half ago. That's the first thing. The second thing about it is that that same sample, I think it was like 2% of the respondents said bin Laden should be a Saudi leader. So they're responding favorably to the rhetoric, not favorably to him as a political leader. But that's bad enough. I mean, I think it's really troubling. And definitely, it's obvious that there's a segment of opinion in Saudi Arabia and other Arab and Muslim countries that is tacking on to this kind of extremism. And it has to be dealt with.
Hussein,
it has to be dealt
Hussein,
with
I'm
both
sorry,
through
guys.
reform, and we have to change our policies too.
Hussein, I'm sorry, we're out of time.